right, so we have 7 out of 8 members of the committee present, which constitutes a quorum. The only one missing is Mark, so I will open the meeting, and we'll start with minutes from the last meeting that Rick sent around. I had one minor comment on it, and that's been fixed. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Okay. All right. Then, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved, seconded and approved. Susan, money, about the same as
No
last week?
change in the financials, but I'll just go through, open space expense donations, basically $250, riders 4,200, and the trust is up to 15,250. So that's getting to be big bucks,
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
relatively speaking, for
Yeah.
sure.
For,
Do you wanna give a quick summary where things are with CP?
no. There is no such thing as a quick summary of it.
Well,
It's easy.
just the fact that the state,
Oh,
boosted things, right?
yes, that's a whole nother enchilada, but, I'll get into that more later.
All right. Let's see, updates on some of the things that, Trails, Destiny's Garden, there weren't any specific, actions associated with that, but any further updates on that?
Nope.
And the kiosk, that would be Mark's thing anyway. Let's say we can continue the discussion on, establishing land priority relative to, maybe few tracts of land that would be maybe ideal to put into the open space category. Tim has, been working on that.
So Rick put together the what do you call it, criteria that I had come up with, together with the Quabbin Land Trust and North County Land
Right.
Trust.
Yep.
And so that's, what I just handed out is the list of everything. And, it's just,
So that's the criteria guide.
those are the criteria. And now I'm gonna give you the one that's hard to read, it's more fun. This is the thing that Rick actually constructed in itself.
Oh, that's how you did it. I was wondering if you had
Yeah.
a big printer.
Yeah, no, I don't. Old fashioned Scotch tape. So, okay, the list that it was on the first sheet of paper, it's big enough, it's easy to read. That's the same words as these ones going across the top.
Yep.
So those are all the criteria, and right under the criteria, is the maximum score that each one of those
So you
criteria.
have like a major criteria topic and then sub-criteria to it.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right. And some of these are somewhat redundant because we combined 3 things, so there may be things on here that we can cross off, right?
Right.
So just to try it out to see how it would work, I went through a few of the parcels. Yeah, I handed out the map, right? Everybody got one of these
Right.
too?
Yep.
So, on this big sheet, the third column is parcel ID.
Yep.
There's entry, map number, and parcel ID. So on this,
That's according to the state, I mean, the town assesses.
that's right, those are the assessor's map numbers. And so on this little map, I put the parcel numbers for the
Yep.
ones that I ran through this little matrix, just to see how they scored.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, does everybody see where they are on this map?
Yep,
Right at the top of the map is, Burnshirt Farm, and then Sawyer's is right below that where the blue dot is, that's a historic house.
Yep.
And then, Susan, the one you had mentioned,
72?
what's that road?
Selfridge.
Selfridge, yeah, Selfridge Road is the road going off
Yep,
to the right.
revisited, yeah.
So that's number 72
Yeah.
on this list.
Just FYI, I sent the actual spreadsheet around to everybody on the committee, so you can actually do this yourself, and see it in bigger print
Yeah,
on your computer screens.
Okay.
yeah, it's much easier to read there.
So just this exact file?
Yeah, that exact file.
Yeah.
Well, he added, Tim did some, added some scores.
Oh, okay.
I just had, the first line as an example, and, actually I formatted it to print out, so that it would print out on 3 pages with the main information on page 1, and then the various criteria on the next 2 pages if you were to print it out just as I sent it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, in the future, that's a better way to print it out. I wanted to do it this way, just to illustrate how it
Yeah.
fits together.
Yeah.
So if you print it out the way you set it up, it'll be bigger print, so
Yeah.
it's much easier to read.
And I can make it even bigger yet once we've eliminated any of the criteria and everything. I just kind of stopped there. But if you look at the file on your computer, you can actually just scroll through the various criteria, and it basically slides left to right with the freeze panes after the total points column.
Yep.
So those total points are just a sum of all the various scores that
Yep.
are on there.
Yep. Yeah, all right, well, this looks like it could be a pretty
Hey,
good.
Katie?
Hi.
Hi, Katie. Well, I think, let's just, relative to, talking about this, I think this is a good start, and the next thing would be maybe what the best way to pursue, like, the discussion, getting appropriate detail onto the map. What do people think about the idea of forming like a subcommittee to go over this? It's too big of a topic at, just a general meeting to go over all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would be good for the subcommittee to have the Mass Mapper GIS
Yeah,
up in front of them so
Yeah.
they can zoom in on things.
yep, yep.
I think
And we could even potentially do it with a Zoom might be a good format for that, because then you'd be sitting in front of the computer
Yep,
and you could have access to things.
I think one of the things, though, that everybody should spend a little bit of time looking at the various criteria and determine for themselves what their priorities are. So we can, whatever the subcommittee, when the subcommittee starts working on this, they've got an idea of what everybody's thoughts are on that. And part of that is what criteria should we be looking at for Hubbardston? Number one, and then number two, how do we address that through the scoring mechanism? Because right now, what you see there is just basically, as Tim said, a consolidation of North County, East Quabbin and Land Trust, and Tim's previous life of the various criteria that were important to those 3 organizations. They may not all be appropriate for Hubbardston, or there may be others that aren't on there
Yep.
that we'd like to see, so.
Yeah, and I can take a look at that thing that North County put together. Did you
It's
go?
in here.
Oh, it is.
This is, yeah, East Quabbin actually had one very similar to Tim's. North County was not as
detailed?
Yeah. It was pretty, it wasn't helpful to me, but
Okay.
their priority, there were, the three sources were all pretty similar in what they felt were criteria to be looked at, but,
Mhm.
you know, East Quabbin Land Trust and North Counties may be different than ours.
Yep.
So,
Oh, well, let's, as
so
far
all the
as-
criteria are there, it's just, do we wanna narrow it down? Do we wanna, set the scoring up so that?
Well, let's just, let's make that an action for the next meeting for all of the members, just to review their criteria and get have their inputs in and bring it to the next meeting.
Yeah,
All right.
sure.
One of the things I noticed is that some of them are hard to, they're a judgment call. Pretty straightforward whether it abuts other conservation areas or abuts other town land, but threat of change undermining conservation value and potential to stimulate other conservation projects.
Yeah.
Those are head scratchers.
Well,
to
they,
me.
they are, where, maybe, direct familiarization with the property
Yep,
would be able to provide some really good, input to some of those things.
that's true. I don't know any of the parcels, so,
Yep.
yeah, that's a good point.
So let's talk about, a subcommittee. I mean, this is a topic that's near and dear to me. I, volunteer myself to be on the subcommittee. I know we can have probably 3 members. We don't wanna, you can't, exceed, committee level, right, to be a subcommittee, so we can't get above a quorum, so, but do we, who would like to be on it? Tim, obviously.
I'll
would
be
like to
on
be
it.
on it. Rick,
Sure.
have it stop there? Yeah, because once we do that, we're getting up into the size. So, is that okay with everybody? Questions?
Sure, Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road.
Yep, hey, Mike.
Would you, good evening. Would you consider an at-large member on that subcommittee?
Yeah, I think so. Anybody got any kind of comment or feel on that? How would that relate? Yeah, because if it was that large, that wouldn't have anything to do with our,
Yeah, no, it doesn't affect that.
yeah.
I mean, would be an open committee anyhow,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
well, then I
well, we
will-
wouldn't be published like we do our regular meeting,
Right.
because it's an informal thing that
Right.
would just be presenting information to this larger
Right.
meeting, so.
Well, I would, if you consider that and whatnot, I'd volunteer for that.
Okay, we'll take
subcommittee.
that, we'll kind of take that down, right?
Did you get a copy of the handout?
I will get one.
Mike, I can, if you give me your
Share Bob's and he can
email
have this
address, I can
Oh,
actually
sure.
send you the tool.
I'll write it down there for you.
That's even better.
I like the sample you picked. That's how we got the name.
What's that?
Oh, that's the name of our farm.
Oh,
Berkshire
yeah,
Hills.
yeah.
But that's how we got the name when we were looking at the map, and it says that's
Oh,
Pretty
yeah,
sure it helps.
the hill range on
yeah.
the map, so we got, alright.
Steph knows Burnchurch Farm quite well, don't you, Steph? She owns it.
What does that mean?
It's called Ancient Forest.
Yeah, I figured forest, but what it,
Well-
How do you spell your last name, Mike?
Stahl,
There's a number of different definitions.
Stoll.
For what
Cause
qualifies
ancient
as
to me
ancient
sounds like
forest.
old grove or.
Yeah, well, that's another
And what's
term
that,
for
that,
it.
you just got his contact info, Rick?
Yes.
Well,
Uh,
I'll even put my.
I've got a paper, I think it was written by somebody at Harvard Forest, who was looking at old trees on, Mount Wachusett.
Yeah,
And he, in that paper, he has a very, thoughtful definition of old growth. It's, the trees have to be like, I'm just gonna make this up, but it's something like at least 2/3 as old as the oldest known trees of that species. And no evidence of stumps or foundations or anything or stone walls that would indicate that it has ever been cleared.
Cause it looks like you checked off 2 spots that have that,
Oh,
right? Is that what
no,
these
no.
dashes mean?
No, dash means it's a 0.
Oh, okay. Alright, then forget it, cause I was thinking, yeah, I haven't seen that.
No, yeah,
And
no.
I've walked in
The-
a lot of that land.
A second major aspect of this overall land criteria assessment, applicability, being ideal properties to look at, is the potential acquisition if you find something that looks like, if we end up with something that we feel is really worthwhile pursuing. And so we've talked to the different land trusts, right?
Yeah.
And what's the status on those, Rick?
Well, neither one was able to make our February 26th meeting.
Yep.
Cynthia offered to come to, her land committee's meeting is on the same night we have our meetings. So
Oh,
she said
okay.
if we could have it maybe our next meeting the week before, she'd be glad to come and talk about that.
Okay,
But all of their criteria are on there, they shared that with me.
yep,
Anna Wilkins was out of town this past week, but she's available for any of our meetings, and they both would be
okay,
like to come. I mean, I think it would be good to do them separately, so we get 2 different perspectives on how they go about their process,
okay,
and I don't know if they're willing to share them with each other, I mean,
yep,
so they have an open invitation, and I just am waiting for them to get back to me.
What do you think about having them come to the subcommittee meeting and then we can report on what the input is from them?
Yeah, we could do that,
What do you think?
especially if it was Zoom, it might be easier for them.
Everybody agree that
Yeah,
that'd be a
sounds good.
good way to get the
Yeah.
input then from them?
Sure.
Okay, so let's go.
I will say that, they're both wanted to come and to one of our meetings if they could, just to meet the people that they
The
don't
entire-
already know, and maybe make a little spiel on their land trust and, looking for members and that kind of thing too, so
Okay,
they have ulterior motives, but,
all right. Well, this is, both Rick and Tim, this is a very good start that'll provide a logical process for identifying ideal pieces of property and whatnot, so.
I have a quick question about this
Yep.
list. Is this all of chapter 61 or how did you get this list? Is this, cause this can't be all of them
No,
in town.
no.
Okay.
This was just a sample.
Oh, this is just a sample, now
Yeah.
you plan
Yeah,
on
this-
possibly
yeah,
looking at.
It was just to see what the tool would look like
Okay,
and stuff.
alright, so there's more than this.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah, and it-
Chris is saying the
it
same
did-
thing, he's like,
even
there's
the-
gotta
even
be
the
more.
criteria and stuff, that was just done
Okay,
by-
so this is just for example
Yeah.
purposes. Alright, thank you. That solves that question.
yeah, so everybody do your homework for next meeting and take a look at the criteria and say, yeah, this is important to me, I think this,
Yeah, yeah,
that
that's
kind of
the,
thing.
that's the action for the entire committee, is just
Yeah.
establish a common criteria that, or a criteria that everybody's in agreement with. All right, any more on that topic? And maybe to hold up, my next topic was, we need to get started on the next update to the open space plan. And Mark would probably be a key commentator, but I know the, is it Montezuma Regional Planning Commission or something, is that the right terminology, MRPC?
Yep, that's
Is
them.
it, what do they contribute, like, free technical expertise in putting plans together, or?
There's a lot that they can do. That's actually the item I came to comment on too, if it's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Christopher Monroe, Grimes Road, planning and EDC. I think this is a super important project. It's under the radar in the town, but from an economic development and planning standpoint,
Yep,
I think it's the single most important thing that any town committee is currently taking on. It's that important to the long-term planning for the town.
what, the
that-
next open space plan?
Yeah, the open
Yep.
space plan
Yep.
and what's going on with that chapter for the master plan.
Okay,
Because it's, we have a very limited amount of stuff we can do for economic development in this town without changing the nature of the town.
Yep,
And being able to use more of the open space that we have in a responsible and prudent way is gonna help us. It's also gonna help us, go for the kind of development that we want. As far as MRPC, there's a lot of stuff MRPC does. They're also a grant, giving authority.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know
not
Jassy
only-
got a grant the last time to help, fund, the, generation of the plan, so.
Yeah, planning, actually recently just got a grant for redoing the solar bylaw. One of the things we're adding to that is, for example, you can't cut down trees to put in a solar farm. That's what we're looking to get out of the new plan.
Yep,
We're looking to have it just be disturbed ground. EDC also is working on a grant with them for a town center overlay. So there are a lot of grant opportunities. There are also potentially some other organizations that are just trail design, trail networking organizations that might be possible to look at too.
yep,
And there are a ton of grants currently available for stuff like this,
yep,
specifically under the ARPA program. Now, the first application deadline for the town ARPA committee closed yesterday. Yeah, it closed yesterday, but there's likely gonna be another round of applications for ARPA money. And there could potentially be money in that, in order to help find somebody to help with this project. There are also ARPA funds available that aren't part of the town funds that have been given away at the state and at the federal level specifically for trail development.
mhm,
I know, out around, Berkshire East, that was at Charlemont, their open space
Yeah.
committee just got a ton of money for putting together a network trail plan in order to connect some of the trails around Berkshire East
Yep.
to the trail systems that are there. So
Mhm.
there are lots of opportunities to work on that, and
all right, now just a point of, interest in the trail connectivity thing that they're talking about. Was that any specific type of trail? Was it snowmobile or just all general purpose trails or?
multi-use. I
Multi-use.
don't know what was included in the multi-use, but it was general multi-use. And there's more programs that are still available. I don't have a good inventory.
On the concept of I mean, that sounds exciting, and there's a sort of related activity going on. There's what do we call ourselves? The Ware River,
Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee Trails Subcommittee.
Oh. Good job, Dave.
well done, I'm glad you said.
You're an alternate.
Yes, I am.
So would that be sort of like the same kind of philosophy, intent?
They're both certainly connected. And with the watershed, it's obviously a lot more complicated because there has been a usage plan that's been held
Yep.
up for a while. But I think we have a real opportunity as a town here to do something really good for the long-term future in terms of, excuse me, linking trails, and not just in Hubbardston, linking with other towns.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that's all really stuff that we're really interested in as an open space committee. I mean, we've already done one little microcosm of that relative to trying to get connectivity from the new land that was just acquired over to the Mid-State Trail. And so that would connect, create a loop from Henry's Grove, if people know where that is, through the new land that was acquired, all the way over to the Mid-State, and then up and around through other public accessible lands, and then back into that same thing. It's about a 6 or 7 mile loop that there's good potential of being created. And so the plan would address things like when you run into parcels that may require easements or things like that, how you go about that and what funding would be required for that, et cetera. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yes.
Yeah,
I came to say that this is something that is coming up at other committees and is recognized as something that's particularly important to the town.
Yep.
So I hope Open Space takes the opportunity to look at this really ambitiously
yeah,
and know that there is support from EDC, there is support from planning, And I imagine there's probably support from the select board too.
I've been
So-
saying this for years.
Well, and I think some of this stuff too, relative to the planning and maybe town economics, when you talk about utilization associated, that would get incorporated into that to, well, I don't know, little tiny things that I've had personal association with. An organization called the Bay State Trail Riders. We have host a ride up at Mount Jeff and use the state forest for a trail ride. But then we've engaged Giacomo's to provide sandwiches and food for that, so they get maybe $200-$400 worth of business from that one event. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, which could be really expanded significantly, I think. Another thing that's even a bigger scale, something like, who's the group that uses Ray Sawyer's field stuff?
Cross
Cross
state.
Cross State.
Cross
There's
state.
there's a large, and this again happens to be equestrian, but there's a group that, well, they had like 100 trailers up at Ray Sawyer's field, and they contracted him just to be able to use the field, so he got some money out of it for the utilization of the field. But they stayed for 3 days, and it's potential like for the town to supply a lot of other things associated with that. I mean, that group has breakfast, lunch, and dinner catered for 3 straight days.
Absolutely.
Very
So-
high church, yeah.
And we are doing initiatives at a planning and at an EDC level that can work with this and are things that are gonna help this initiative and are gonna help economic development in general, like with what's going on with the agricultural accessory bylaw.
Yep.
Where farm properties are hopefully, subject to approval of the voters and all the work that goes into it, gonna get to do a whole bunch of things by right. Instead of it being something that you have to do by special permit or by going through a whole
Yeah.
bunch of zoning
Yep.
hoops. So the hope is, and from an EDC level, is that combined with what's going on with open space and what's going on with linking these trails, they're gonna work together and they're going to create these opportunities for creating an economic benefit in the town that isn't just the stamping out of large houses on 2-acre lots.
Yeah.
So, they're all parts in the same plan, and I hope we all work together on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris, along those lines, when we did the last update of this a few years ago now, was kind of disappointed that it was all done by our committee, the update. I tried to get other people in town involved because we need the information, because the open space and recreation plan has a lot of information they need that has nothing to do with trails, land that's open in town, what the facilities are in town, those kinds of things. And I was kind of surprised that that information either didn't exist or maybe I just didn't know the right people to go to, but I started at town center and worked my way down and got nowhere. So we had to create a lot of it ourselves, and I think this time around it would be very important, especially given what you said, that we get other boards and committees in town to be involved in the, you know, on a subcommittee or whatever you wanna call it, to put the thing together.
Well, I'm confident that there's interest, and well, frankly, 2 of the people most interested are from other boards, are currently sitting here tonight.
That's why I brought it up.
There's definitely interest, and open space will be supported for it.
Good, great. Great.
Yeah, and this kind of stuff too, if you're looking for help from other boards, Whitney and I have been talking about this forever, but Whitney sent it to Dan, so that way it's not just my mouth going all the time, to the select board meeting, the other day, and we have decided, as a select board, that we should have we're gonna try it out with one and see how it goes, but from there on, hopefully maybe quarterly or, you know, a few times a year, have at least a member of every committee and board to come together for a meeting. More can come, but you have, it's like, we can only fit so many people in the room, but at least one rep from your committee to come, and we're all gonna talk about what we're working on, so that way, A, we're not reinventing the wheel by two boards working on the same thing, and you're wasting your time. Work together to speed things up, and also for ease of, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. We don't need to do this twice. But also, you're looking for help. Hey, well, we're all sitting here. I'm hoping that, we can get this help with this, this, and this, and I'm looking for these specific boards, but any other boards that wanna chime in. So, come with your laundry list of what you're working on and what you need, so to this meeting that's coming up. I believe we picked, I'm not supposed to be the one inviting everybody, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'll start spreading the word. When was it? Today is March. May 11th at 6:30 in this room. That's what we have decided. That's a Wednesday, because that's usually, Wednesdays aren't usually too heavy with meetings, so, and honestly, it's my easiest day. But anyway, but at least one rep from your board to come with your list and what you need. So he's already thinking about his list.
Well, I
So-
can tell you that the open space plan, format,
Yeah,
the state requires, stuff from town rec committee,
yep,
planning committee, not necessarily the board of selectmen, but
no, but,
but those and the open space committee and or Concom.
yeah,
When we submitted our first draft of the update last time around, it got bounced back by the state looking for more information, specifically on some of those areas that we couldn't address as an open space committee. So
Yep.
those committees would be the most important right there.
in reality, there should be a rep from every single one sitting in that room. Cause there's no, we need to all start working together and helping each other to make this town better and, make things easier for all of us. So the only way to do that is start getting us all together, at least one rep, like I said. So bring your list.
Sounds good.
But what
Hopefully it will
happened
help.
last time was, that's a good lesson learned.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I would like to request if you reach out to MRPC about a plan or grants, or if you're looking to enter into an agreement with them for them to do the work, please copy the chair of the planning board in on that. Because that had happened with a project going on with the EDC, and it caused some delays because everybody wasn't on the same page.
I mean, it's probably premature at this point. The present plan is good till next year. At our last meeting, we kind of figured we should be starting to work on that this summer for that. So the timing's good, but, a lot of the information actually already exists, so I'm not, it depends on what the grant thing would be great. But as far as having them do it for us, I don't know that we need that at this point. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, but some of the grant stuff could be used to fund, it's a pretty big, it's a big project if it's done correctly. And I believe money could be used actually to pay Jassy to do most of the document generation, because she was working on it essentially full-time, so she did get a little bit of refund of a lot of the time she put into generating that. But
Plus we have two.
relative to the grant, is the grant money you get from MRPC just purely for the generation of the plan?
There's a bunch of different grant programs, and I'm not an expert on all of them.
Through MRPC or just grants in general? I know there's a lot of grants
Through
outside
MRPC,
available.
There-
But
there's
I'm
a bunch.
talking about MRPC related grants. That's purely for the generation of the plan?
They have a bunch of different grant programs. Some of them go for different things. I can't speak authoritatively
Okay.
on any of them, but there is a lot of money available for having plans and work done.
My guess is Mark Kresge, who's not here tonight, but my guess is he's pretty up on most of that. Because that's his field, he does that stuff, so.
And as I mentioned, MRPC currently has 2 pending projects with the town, so it would be easy for either EDC or planning to just say, hey, do you know if there's anything going on for this?
Mhm.
So
What do you, I know they're working on the master plan, what else are they working on?
they're working on a town center zoning overlay.
See that, there's requirements in the open space and recreation plan for exactly that information. So as Katie said, let's not reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I imagine there's a significant, well, it's not I imagine, there is a significant discovery process going on with the town center overlay, and there's a good chance some of that might be common for what you need for the open space.
Yeah,
plan.
exactly.
Good, good discussion. Anything else on that? So that will be definitely another agenda item for our next meeting. The, I just give you let's see, what do we call ourselves? Ware River Trail Subcommittee? That's
Yes.
probably an abbreviation.
Yeah.
In an analogous thing relative to trail connectivity, utilization, et cetera, I'll dwell a little bit because some people know some of the history here, some don't. There's been over the probably past, 15 years or more, right? I don't know, long time, there's been maybe the right word would be friction. There's been quite a bit of friction between DCR watershed that's in charge of the Ware River watershed area, and people wanting to use the trails, all flavors, hunters, hikers, bikers, equestrians, snowmobile, etc. And they've closed a number of trails because they feel they're too close to the watershed, and some of the lands they don't make accessible. And they have been pretty closed relative to, closed-minded about, maybe a new trail that would create some connectivity, and that kind of thing. But there's been a change in leadership, and so the mentality seems to have changed quite a bit. The approach to working with DCR was disconnected, to say the least. So there'd be a biker group, a snowmobile group, equestrian group, et cetera, all trying to work with them. And DCR, even in of themselves, didn't want like a cohesive unit to come before them. They only wanted to talk to one group at a time, which was a poor decision on their part. But that's probably because they really didn't want to listen to anybody anyway. So what has happened in the last 6 months or so? Dave's now on the Ware River Watershed Committee. But in conjunction with the change in leadership, there's appears to be a different mentality there. The approach to working to get trail connectivity, trail utilization, et cetera, a subcommittee was formulated, and it's an extremely broad, there's about 14 prime members, as well as a alternate to each of those prime members. And so there's 14 voting members of the subcommittee on things that, they're not gonna vote in anything anyway, so they can't vote and say, okay, we're gonna do this little section of trail to connect that trail to this trail. They can't hold that vote. But if there are issues that come up that need to get dealt with, there's 14 voting members. So the voting is a little bit, sounds like it means a lot. It doesn't mean too much, because they can't vote anything and have it be officially recognized by DCR. That would be nice. But there's representation from all the major towns. So that was Rutland, Ocam, Barry, Hubbardston. Is there any others in there?
Yeah.
That's it. And then there's representation from the historical viewpoint, an equestrian viewpoint, a snowmobile viewpoint, a hiker viewpoint, a hunting viewpoint,
You don't have anybody in the hunting ring, you know?
that's right.
You're still
and-
forming.
And so, and people have already been asked to be, if they want to be members of this, and we've got people signed up for it. And so we're starting to hold regular meetings. So this has all been formulated in the last 2 or 3 months, really. So, and Dave and I am on it as a open space so the key committees related to that were open space, so most of the towns, they wanted an open space representative on it, et cetera, so that's proceeding very well, and it links up to some of this trail connectivity, because it'd be great, I mean, to get connectivity not just within Hubbardston, but from Hubbardston to the outside world as well, just like what we want to do with that new section of land that was just acquired, getting over to the Mid-State Trail. This would open up things down in the southwest quadrant of things, getting down to maybe the rail trail and some of the trails over in Ocam, et cetera. So the more you can create interconnectivity, which is a prime criteria of mass trails, connectivity is a prime evaluator for anything, so there's a little update on that.
Bob, does staff from DCR attend the advisory committee meetings?
Not the subcommittee, no.
What was the question, Tim?
Well, the DCR staff attend the advisory committee?
No, but we bring in Dan, what's it?
Well, the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee is officially sanctioned, and DCR attends, they actually hold the meeting.
So we are a subcommittee to that, and we
Yeah.
do interface with, what's it, Brian?
Dan Clark is the
Dan
person
Clark
we've been
is the
dealing with.
person that we would mostly deal with.
And he's the director for Quabbin and the Ware River watersheds.
Oh,
So he's got some clout.
Okay. So that's exciting stuff to see that you can get, that we're striving towards that connectivity aspect to get the utilization access to a broader area outside of Hubbardston. Let's see. That's it on old business that I have. Anybody else get anything on the older business? And new business, I didn't have a particular topic. Anybody got some new business?
Yeah, I'd like to
Susan?
take just a couple minutes on a specific. We've been talking about prioritizing, and there's a chunk of land on Selfridge Road, it's 38.4 acres. And I look at this as a potential win-win-win. It would involve, if it ever actually happened, an open space win, housing, affordable housing, which we desperately need to seriously start working on that 10%, and an agricultural aspect. So, the open space conference that's sponsored here, I guess it's Massachusetts, on a webinar just last week, 2 things really struck me as gems of truth. One has to do with equity. The point was made that low-income folks generally have less access to open space. I think we understand what that means, mostly urban perhaps, but so that is something that we really need to take into account when we're looking for adding more open space to somehow connect it with that population. And another one was the cluster concept. Planning board, I'm sure you're familiar with cluster concept, but if we utilize that concept even on this smaller 38 acres, it would still
We're talking about cluster housing.
cluster housing, yeah. It would afford open space still. It could accommodate some housing, and maybe, if we're really clever, have an agricultural aspect to it. Some short-term, whether it would be a town farm, that sounds lovely, but it's hard work to make it really work, I understand that. We even toyed with that idea over at Fieldstone Farm, but This is a little bit more accessible, we think, but anyway. So let's get back to the 3 areas. If it's cluster housing, and this is, housing 101. We have, and we've got an expert on this, the Hubbardston House has 36 apartments, right? The low income that we have here in town. Does that sound right?
About right, I don't know. for
Yeah,
sure.
it's 2 buildings and 32, yeah. And then, of course, we have our Habitat going up, which, by the way, there's a celebration of halfway through this Sunday. I don't know the exact time. Todd, do you happen to know?
I haven't heard.
Probably 10, that's what the other one was. So that's actually almost happening. It would be something to seriously look at, because we could have, the present zoning has between 7 to 14 units on 15 acres. So you could have at least a dozen homes or units. You could still have your open space, and you could maybe, as I said, add this agricultural annual things like pumpkins, something that's fairly easy to grow, or long-term. The Boy Scouts could plant Christmas trees. I mean, realize that's a long-term project, or raspberry bushes or something. So it's just one way to connect the open space, the housing, and agricultural. How would we pay for this? Yeah. CPC, as I said, there's no easy way to explain the financing of CPC. I feel like we've really hit all of our areas. The church will be starting to be sited soon, hopefully. Fieldstone Farm, that's a big chunk over there on the east side of town. And we are paying off our new playground. So I feel like we really, as CPC, have gotten a lot of things accomplished lately. But I feel like the housing, if we don't act proactively, because we just got that bylaw shot down, am I correct in that? The bylaw that said 28 units per year. And we were told that we can't keep that anymore from the Attorney General. So, I mean, we have some other good things in place, the frontage, the acreage, and we're not particularly attractive because we don't have the infrastructure for a 40B. That's what it is now, but who knows what the future may hold. So I just think if we could proactively really start to work on our 10%, does this sound like a crazy idea? It's not that much money, relatively speaking. It's $133,900. It used to be around $140,000, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago when I did some investigation.
Selfridge, that
Okay,
dirt
it's,
road coming off,
yes. How about
Cruise.
if I just read the,
Dan Gallant lives on it.
No, on
No.
Selfridge?
Yeah, doesn't,
no,
no?
no,
No.
no.
But
this
it
is
was- I
at
thought there
Cruise
was a-
Road where there's that sharp turn.
Yeah, and there's like the dirt,
Yep,
is
Yeah.
that a dead end?
Yes.
well, and that's interesting
Well,
because.
If it goes,
It is now, it used to be an old town road
yeah, that,
that went over
To
through the
flag.
campground.
Right?
yeah, that's what I was gonna say, it used to go
Yeah.
to the
Went
campground.
right over
You
to.
can still walk it.
Yeah, but it's a dead end.
Yeah.
It's a dead end now. Well, the
That
road
leads me-
continues.
That leads me.
But it's not,
That leads me to my next question, which goes over here. Would that be a problem, cause it's a dead end, cause of zoning, having a cluster on a dead end, yeah, see?
There are certainly some challenges with that because we do have a bylaw that prohibits you from putting in a dead end road that's longer than 500 feet. But if it already exists, I would have to ask if that passes engineering muster. There's a chance it might. We do have cluster zoning in our bylaws. That is something that is possible to do. It has gone out on a couple of townwide surveys, and it is tested really badly. But I think the reason it's tested really badly is because when people are going through and looking at it and they see cluster zoning, I think your average person has no idea what that means. They don't know that that's something where, yeah, you do have some higher density in this area, but because you have that higher density in this area, you get to have all of this as open space. And when you look at the survey devices that have been used, that's not explained. It's just a matrix of, do you support this multi-use? Do you support cluster zoning? Do you support the lot limitations, all of that stuff? And it's just there. There's no real expectation, or rather explanation of what cluster zoning is. That's actually something that's come up with the plan that the EDC is working on. That some of those questions have had some unintentional bias built into them, or potentially hard to understand. It's something to think about with the idea of doing cluster zoning. I think it could be a lot more popular than it's tested in the past, but there's a lot of work to be done on that.
Well, if, I'll just take another minute or two and just read the description. Large parcel of land at the end of Cruz Road, a 300-foot road would need to be put in, parenthesis, or you may be able to access this land from Flag Road, whatever that means.
So
That's a
further.
pipe dream. It
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't really
Yeah.
connect without a
Yeah.
right of way or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
That's a,
you
so
can
she's,
walk through there, you can ride through there
you're
and
not
stuff
gonna
like
have-
that, but,
yeah. But what a beautiful.
that would be a lot of work to put that in from that end.
Yeah, just, well, I'm just reading what I see here. But what a beautiful piece of property, possible horse farm, parenthesis. Previous buyers were going to put in an organic farm. Or you could do an oversized estate lot, private getaway, etc. And this is interesting. Buyers to do their due diligence with the town as far as all town approvals required for the road installation. There must be a story here, right? The seller had started this process and is highly motivated. That caught my eye. I mean, she's already come down to $7,000. So would possibly be willing to work with potential buyers if necessary. Call today for more information. And just as a little corollary to that, reading through some town reports, I noticed that she once went to the ZBA for a variance and she was denied. So, I don't know, that's just the history there. So, but it's an idea, because some of the funding then maybe could come from CPA. And if we really wanted to put our money where our mouth was, if 10 grand came out of our Hubbardston Trust, I don't know, could we use that for that? Would we want to? I don't know, I'm just raising some ideas.
Well, I think that it's an idea that goes well past this committee by itself.
Yeah.
From some of the topics, and a lot of it gets right into, I think, the planning.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I did give Alice a quick, well, I just need some basic stuff, because
I don't know, I
she's,
put you
there's,
on the spot relative to, you can't speak for the whole committee, but I mean, relative to, if Susan wanted to pursue this, to see what it is, I think the planning committee would be the next place to start, right?
Yes, the planning board actually sits as the affordable housing committee for the town.
Right.
It's simultaneously both committees. When you get sworn into one, you're sworn into the other.
and that's the connection too to CPA. Alice is the liaison there, which in some ways is good, because then you know what your right hand and left hand are doing, because you're both.
Yeah,
So.
and there is some history on a lot of those funny shaped lots. People coming from the planning board, I've been on it for a year and a half, 2 years, and people come up all the time and ask for just kind of an informal opinion on whether or not something would be subdividable. Because we have a lot of lots in this town that are landlocked, that don't have frontage, that are fairly large lots, that are not currently subdividable. And the only thing you could do with them would be to do cluster development, or would be to do an actual subdivision. But the problem with those is you run into the 500-foot road rule, which is, I think this one might have actually come in front of the planning board at one point, which is probably why that has the comment of the 300-foot road on it, so.
On the map, it looks like it's quite a bit more than 300 feet.
Well,
The
just
road
because
itself
it
is-
looks like it doesn't mean it actually is.
Yeah.
A road, like dirt roads and stuff like that, once it gets to a certain point, they don't consider it roadworthy enough for fire trucks and,
Well, I'm looking from the last lot where there's a house on
Okay.
that Selfridge Road
yeah,
to where this parcel is over 1,000 feet.
okay. Is it maintained
Well, that
by the
doesn't
town?
sound right.
I don't know.
Or is it,
There's 2 houses even, I think, one on each side.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you
thought
and
it was
Steph
just
walked
past
it
that.
once, remember that area, didn't
We-
you?
Yeah, we rode
Yeah.
down the road and down into the campground and stuff.
I thought that property started just past where those two houses were.
Right, that's, I believe, where that.
Yeah, so that's only at most a few hundred feet down the road.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, the house, this is a DeVico property that's on,
Yeah,
that's on the sample spreadsheet,
yeah,
and
yeah, there were steps there, we rode right past
yeah,
that.
it's probably 300 feet, maybe a little more.
All right.
But, excuse me, I think what Susan is getting at is that I don't know that the town has an appetite to spend more money on open space.
I thought it was a
but-
miracle that we got that done as it was, sorry,
But-
Chuck.
But if there are other aspects of a particular piece of property that can leverage not only the open space part of it, but also something the town desperately needs, which is affordable housing, and possibly agriculture. I haven't really looked at the DeVico land, so I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but the point being, there might be more likely chance of getting it funded, either by the town or with grants. I don't know anything about affordable housing. I don't know if there's state money involved in that, that kind of thing, so.
Who actually builds the houses?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know with the project that we're currently looking at, as the Affordable Housing Committee, we're trying to get some senior housing built. Essentially what it requires is we have to donate the property to the developer, and the developer, then creates the senior housing. So, for example, like the issue we're currently having is it turns out there's some contamination issues, on the piece of land that was earmarked for the Affordable Housing Committee to
The
work
sand
on senior
pits?
housing, yeah. There's some lead contamination and some street tailings. And that's been slowing up the process, but the point that we're trying to get to is when you have the land and you have the whole project design, you essentially just take it and donate it to the developer. And that's how that's working on that aspect.
Mm.
If it's being done as just an ordinary cluster development, I don't know that it's gonna work exactly the same way. You do have to get a developer sometimes involved. I've not met any developers that do that particular type of work. That'd be one of the next steps, find out what their requirements would be. But the Affordable Housing would definitely talk about that. I'd recommend just showing up to one of the meetings.
Well, it just piqued my interest, having that workshop and the cluster and the equity aspect sort of all being synchronicity, sort of. But, now that we've lost that 28 per year, I just feel like we're vulnerable. I understand we don't have infrastructure and so forth, but I've seen some other towns where 40B people just waltz in, and then with something that the design is not right, we're not trying to be elitists, but it needs to fit the town, and so we wanna be proactive on that. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, I hope.
Yeah,
We wanna, because Hubbardston's residents have said they wanna keep the rural character. That's one of our values, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's not mutually exclusive with, I mean, you can have both, the rural character and low-income housing. Look at the wonderful Habitat house that's going up right now, but that's only one, so. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
We're definitely in an interesting place because, was it 47.5%, 48% is owned by the state. 10%'s already been developed. You run down the list, 2% of the land left in this town is still developable. And half of that has some restrictions on it. A good chunk of what's left as developable land is actually the sand pits, the gravel pits rather. So we're running to a point where we are running out of developable land, and there have been a lot of A&Rs filed over the winter. A&Rs, approval not required. It's essentially just taking a lot and cutting it up into smaller lots so that those lots can be sold and built on. It's not a subdivision, it's a step below it.
Sounds like a
So-
subdivision to me. Sorry, I'm just saying.
Well, the subdivision from a technical standpoint is much larger. It's not just splitting it into two lots. Different approval process. So, there's been a bunch of those suggesting that there is going to be a significant number of permits pulled this summer, still well below the 28. but that it is gonna be a relatively high build yield.
Well, then how do we get our 10% affordable housing? Just a silly question.
It may not be possible with only 2% of the town left.
Okay, well, so they can't mandate something on us that we can't physically do. It's an impossible thing, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if there's no buildable land, they can, you can obviously still have a 40B project if you put together the land to do it. But if everything's built on, there's less of an economic incentive for a builder to do that.
Well, what is the status on that maybe Katie knows the answer, is the status on that 28, building permit?
It's gone.
Oh,
It's gone.
it's gone.
Is it
The
just
Attorney
changed
General
on?
said we
Yeah, the
can't
AG
renew
threw
it.
it
No, I
out.
know it didn't get approved,
Yeah.
but then, so it's not approved. Does
Yep.
does it need to get rewritten so
It
that
can't.
it's?
No, the Attorney
Yeah.
General
It can't.
disapproved it.
The Attorney General struck it down convincingly.
It's derogation of.
In order to have something like that, what the information that went back to Alice was, and to the town was, you have to show a need. Like there has to
Yeah, yeah.
be, the school has to be overflowing, your sewers have to be at capacity, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like, you have to be at max. And originally, when it was written, that was the problem. You know, our school was at the max,
Okay.
like, the buses were at, everything was at the max, it was just building and building and building. But we haven't had that problem. And we haven't even come close to that 28 number in a long time. So the AG looks at it as, you're being restricted for no reason, you're done,
Okay,
to put it in super layman terms. In a Katie way.
okay. All right.
But I think I'm
So
hearing.
what would,
Okay.
so what would, the next step for Susan would be to go to the planning of the Affordable Housing Committee or
Yes.
whatever?
I am 100% sure the chair would be very excited to put that on the agenda.
Sure. I mean, it's just an idea, but it could work. So, okay.
And by the way,
Yeah, no, but I mean, that was the point of my question though, the,
What's
if
the next
you wanna,
step?
if you wanna
Yep.
go forward, you need some support, and it gets well beyond the scope of this committee.
Oh, yeah.
It gets much more in the realm of the planning and the affordable housing committee than the open space committee. We come in as an aspect of the cluster housing, or whatever you wanna call it, and then, what you wanna do, define, et cetera, the characteristics of the open space that would be, associated with that overall development plan, so.
And by the way, it was a 39 with 17 low on the score and 62 high on our scoring system, right smack dab in the middle. Just saying, okay.
well, and I think there's probably the opportunity for adding to the trail loop we've been talking about through all that land back there. With that piece of property, plus maybe some easements with the folks at the campground.
Yep. Yeah, relative to trail
Yes,
interconnectivity, that would
exactly.
be a phenomenal thing, relative to existing trails within the forest to go up and over,
Right.
head south down through that area. And then from there,
Yep.
if you had an easement relative to, that gets into Carol Rogers land as you
Mhm.
go further down Southridge. And there already is a crossing, that can hold the vehicle across the Canesto Brook down there.
In the campground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've driven over it.
You have?
Yeah, oh, I've been down to the campground a bunch of times, looking at it for trying to build some momentum with Carol, and like, this is, because a lot of people have no clue we even have a campground. They're like, what do you mean we
Yeah.
have a campground? I'm like,
A lot of people
it's a
have
nice
about,
place, you should
about
check it out.
99.9%
hard to
don't know we
even,
have a
how do you know it's
campground.
on a line?
Yeah, it's, well, it kinda is, she's got a couple cabins on there for
Yeah,
rent.
on the Airbnb.
Yeah, but it's like a hidden little secret gem that nobody has a clue about.
Yeah.
So, and yes, that bridge does hold a car, cause my Chevy Traverse has driven over it numerous times.
Yeah. Yeah. And then somehow mysteriously, there's a little fishing pool right there.
Yeah, like a pond, and it's
Yeah.
a beautiful brook, and yeah, she's been trying to get some stuff together down there, and she's been working hard, and I commend her. It is a gold mine.
It is.
It was done a little differently, but she's gonna do her way, and that's her prerogative, cause it's her business. But it's a beautiful piece of property.
Yep.
It is, yeah.
Anything else?
I have one minor thing.
Okay, Tim?
At Gates Farm, there is an agway gate, it looks like the wind blew it off one of the hinges, so it's up in the air like
What gate is this?
this. It's just on the north side of the foundations.
Oh, Gates Hill?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's see, we put that in, Tom Bradco put that in. Yeah, I can go up and take a look at that. So what is it, just the hinge mechanism may have got misaligned or something?
may have, yeah, I'm sorry, I meant to trample over through the snow and look at it,
Okay,
and I
so it's,
forgot.
it's just tilted on one end is tilted or something?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's up in the air.
yeah.
'Cause it's still latched, it's still fastened on the latch end, so
Yeah.
it pivoted on the latch.
Yeah. Well, if it's got those typical farm gates with brackets, which it does, one of those might have got loose and worked its way down, so one end is.
Yeah. I suspect that's what it is.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. That's something Stephanie does. Anything else? Mike?
Are you about ready to wrap it up?
Yep.
Okay. 1 minute?
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Talking about the Ware River watershed, and I love getting out there in the wet areas, and I got my
Okay, so-
sporting,
Just as far as the recording, this is Mike Stoll.
5 Lombard Road.
Okay.
And I got my sporting license this year.
You got your
There's
what license?
My sporting, so my hunting and fishing license.
Oh,
Has he got in the bag?
But yeah, this is called a bag limit, but I don't see many partridge out there or snowshoe hare like when I was a kid. But open season on Mylars. Mylars are, and I don't know how many, I'm making a mess. But I haven't counted them, but I've been hunting these in the Ware River watershed. No other litter or trash but Mylar balloons. And so I don't know if people know about this kind of issue out there, but it's an issue for the wildlife, obviously, and it's a detriment to our beautiful
Absolutely.
spaces out there. So I might have to start my own little personal campaign to see if people can restrict the purchase of their Mylar balloons. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 or 5 together. You know, hey, buy one, and it's also, they're helium, so they float away and they're litter and they get into our deep woods. So I don't know what ideas might work, but it is, when I say an issue for me, because I end up dragging this stuff out of the woods, and I don't know if anybody is out there kayaking, canoeing, or hiking in some of these deep wood areas, but these get everywhere, and I don't see any other trash out there. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll add an anecdote to that too, just relative to the pervasiveness of plastic trash, and in particular Mylar balloons. Steph and I had the pleasure of visiting a place down in West Virginia in a town called Cass, where the population was 29. And the place where we stayed, they owned 900 acres. It was right adjacent to the massive Monongahela National Forest. And we were riding up along through a trail, and you got a Mylar balloon over there. Yeah, the stuff gets everywhere.
Is that where the Cass Railroad is?
Yeah.
And the big antenna?
Yes,
The
yes.
big antenna's at a town about 30 miles from there.
Okay, but
yeah, so
same
there's no
general
cell
area?
phone thing, not because of the lack of ability. There's a massive antenna out there that's just looking to pick up information from space. And
Yeah,
and so
everything is
the
mitigated.
cell towers are not allowed there,
Yeah.
even if somebody wanted to put them in.
That's right near the climbing area,
Yep.
the rock climbing area. I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
All right, anything else? All right.
Next meeting?
Motion to adjourn, oh, next meeting, I did it before we
He
adjourned.
does that now.
Well, do you wanna do it in conjunction with what you said earlier, the, relative to, one of the people from the,
Oh, when they could make it.
East
Oh,
Robin.
right, they couldn't do the last
Well, I
one.
thought you wanted to do that with the subcommittee.
yeah, but you said they wanted to come in and talk to us anyway, so even if they
Yeah.
wanted to come in and talk to us, then we'd still need to have it on a different, potentially
Well,
different.
so, our normal March meeting, cause this is the February meeting technically, right?
Yes, yes.
Would have been the 30th, and when Cynthia got back to me, they have their meeting on the 30th, so she was wondering if it could be sometime the week before. But given that we're running this meeting late, if we wanted to
Oh,
do
we
it.
could just do it on a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Yeah, we could. We could. I mean, I have no, you know,
I
I'm
guess I
just-
would vote instead of moving it off a whole week to get way out of, or moderately more out of skew, just to hold it on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Thursday would be easier for Bob in case he forgets and I could still make the 40
I was gonna
hours.
say that, but I didn't wanna say it.
This time it was a holiday, so.
Yeah, so why don't we,
31st?
yeah, why don't we do that, and then I'll check in with Cynthia and see
Yeah.
if she can make that, and then maybe have,
Is it okay with people, the 31st? Yep.
maybe have Anna in April then.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
by
good.
then, we'll, maybe have gotten a little further along in our process, and
Yeah.
we can share it with them and get their input.
Okay, next meeting will be the 31st of March. And probably here at the same time, as long as this is available.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
That's second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Another great meeting. Thanks for the attendees. This is great. I mean,